Next time on Independent Lens, what if your body had a mind of its own?
When I put my hand up here, it actually stops. And if I don't, I'll just keep going.
Over 300,000 Americans have dystonia, a brain disorder that forces muscles into abnormal movements or postures.
You took one look at me and you fell in love.
That's not necessarily true.
Twisted on the next Independent Lens.
Join us tonight at 11 here on OPB.
Business partner R.V. Coons & Associates has made a contribution to Oregon Public Broadcasting. Additional funding has been provided by you, the contributing members of OPB.
A new nation and the Supreme Court are born.
You had two major views about what the Constitution really stood for.
Everything people do in this time is setting a precedent.
They were fighting to preserve the Union.
Desperate times had called for desperate measures.
Until Marshall, I think that anybody really have a coherent vision of how powerful this institution could become.
One nation under law, the Supreme Court.
See the extraordinary efforts wildlife experts are taking to diagnose and protect Oregon birds from the deadly bird flu. Then we're off to the coast for a look at a vicious predator threatening a number of species. You'll also meet a tiny fish that survives under incredibly harsh conditions.
Oregon Field Guide, Thursday night at 8:30.
Would you like to know what goes on behind the scenes at Oregon Field Guide? Well, now we have a great way to share some of those off-camera adventures with you, an e-newsletter. All you have to do is sign up, and you'll get some great stories from our producers and crew. To join, just click on opb.org/newsletter or visit the Oregon Field Guide website.
Serving Oregon and Southern Washington, this is OPB.
Funding for local broadcast of Nightly Business Report has been provided by viewers like you and by the following.
Key Bank, encouraging people to take the money they would have spent and save it, because even a little can add up to a lot. More information at key.com/saveday.
SAFE. Since 1914, SAFE has been protecting Oregon workers and making Oregon a safer place to work.
Oil prices catch fire in the trading pits in New York. The cost of crude rises more than 5% today, its biggest one-day jump in more than a year. Two factors were behind the move, one in the Middle East, one here at home.
Here at the New York Stock Exchange, investors keep stocks heading higher despite those oil prices and disappointing earnings from some blue chips. The Dow adds 32.5 points.
Maybe it was the razor. Motorola says billionaire investor Carl Icahn wants a seat on its board. The news encouraged other investors. Motorola shares jumped almost 7%.
Then these are the high-tech tools helping big oil go deeper into the Gulf of Mexico than ever before. As we continue our series, Deep Oil, we'll look at the technologies making deep water drilling possible.
I'm Paul Kangas.
And I'm Susie Garrett. This is Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, January 30th.
Nightly Business Report is made possible by
Franklin Templeton Investments, providing a unique perspective through the specialized investment expertise of Franklin Templeton Mutual Series and Fiduciary Trust. Franklin Templeton Investments. Gain from our perspective.
And by A.G. Edwards.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Stocks on Wall Street rose today despite a 5.5% jump in oil prices and a 5.5% drop in shares of Dow component 3M. Investors dumped shares of 3M after the company posted quarterly earnings that missed analyst estimates. The earnings news was better at two other Dow components, Procter & Gamble and Merck, but their shares also fell today. Suzanne Pratt has details.
The company, well known for its Post-it notes, posted disappointing results today, as well as a disappointing forecast for this year's profits. 3M earned $1.10 a share in the fourth quarter, an improvement from the same period last year, but below analyst estimates. Citing a slowdown in worldwide economic growth, the company said it expects 2007 profits to range from $4.60 a share to $4.75. Analysts were expecting closer to $5. Some analysts blamed the guidance miss on poor communication from 3M rather than a decline in any of the company's core businesses. Analyst Chris Kotowich of AG Edwards, which has done business with 3M in the last year, has the stock rated neutral.
Well, I think we'd like to get some more visibility that the investments that they're making are bearing some fruit. And it doesn't look like an expensive stock as you headed into today, but I don't think many people expected the high end of guidance to be $4.75.
Quarterly profit news from Merck also disappointed investors. Excluding extraordinary charges, the drug maker earned 50 cents a share in the fourth quarter, matching analyst estimates but falling short of the year-ago number. Nevertheless, Merck said it's still on track to produce annual profit growth in the double digits by 2010. Procter & Gamble is also optimistic about its future. In its most recent quarter, the consumer products giant earned 84 cents a share, topping analyst estimates by a penny. In addition to raising sales projections, P&G upped its fiscal full-year profit forecast by a few pennies a share. Oppenheimer analyst Linda Bolton Weiser explained Wall Street's muted response to the news.
I think a company like Procter & Gamble wants to have positive headlines to show investors, and sometimes that's all it is a headline, and maybe it doesn't really mean anything in terms of the real performance expectation moving forward.
Earnings season is nearly at the halfway point. According to Thomson Financial, results so far have been good, showing profit growth for the S&P 500 of about 10%. Suzanne Pratt, Nightly Business Report, New York.
As we mentioned, there was a heated rally in the oil patch today. Traders sent prices to their highest level in 3 weeks. Light sweet crude for March delivery settled at $56.97 a barrel. That was up $2.96 or 5.5%. That as Saudi Arabia said it would begin production cuts this week, and traders realize winter weather is here to stay in the Northeast. Oil prices have been dropping since the beginning of the year, and Bill O'Grady of AG Edwards says today was a turnaround of technicals.
Some investors were simply pulling back from those investments. Others were making allocations away from energy towards other commodities like grains. And so we had this big decline in oil prices. My suspicion is a lot of that selling has probably finally ended, and now we're starting to see the market again rediscover geopolitical and economic fundamentals that frankly didn't justify prices of $50.
The stock market moved higher from the open, shrugging off investor caution as the Federal Reserve's Open Market Committee began its two-day policy meeting. Instead, investors focused on earnings and a strong reading on consumer confidence. At midday, the Dow posted a 38-point gain. NASDAQ was up 7. A jump in oil prices sent energy stocks higher in the afternoon, giving the broader market a firm undertone. So the Dow Industrial Average closed up 32.53 at 12,523.31. NASDAQ Composite was up 7.55, ending at 2448.64. Standard & Poor's 500 Index gained 8.20, ending at 1428.82. Over in the bond market, the 10-year note gained 5/30 seconds to 98 2/30 seconds, putting the yield at 4.88%.
Shares of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange slipped 1.5% today on news that quarterly earnings and revenues missed analyst estimates. Profits at the nation's largest futures exchange rose 33% in the fourth quarter, thanks to strong volume in the derivatives markets. But per-share earnings of $2.91 were 7 cents below estimates. Earlier today, I talked with the Chicago Merc's CEO, Craig Donohue, about those earnings and the status of the exchange's $8 billion merger with the Chicago Board of Trade. We began by talking about the outlook for earnings for 2007.
Well, I think the outlook has continued very strong growth. You know, this was our 6th consecutive year of record earnings, and it was our 7th consecutive year of record volume growth. And essentially what's happening is these markets are expanding very dramatically. Part of that is technology and the fact that we're now 75% electronic. We have global reach today. We have an increasing and expanding set of customers globally that are using these products, and they're becoming, I think, much more inventive about how they use derivative products to hedge and protect against risks.
Mr. Donahue, as you know, the Federal Reserve is meeting today and tomorrow to make a decision about the direction on interest rates. Are you worried about any type of interest rate event that could slow down growth of the Chicago Merc?
No, I mean, generally, obviously we exist to hedge those kinds of risks. And so, when people are unsure about the direction of interest rates, for example, or where they have an interest rate exposure that could be affected by Fed monetary policy or a rate hike or decrease, they tend to come here to manage those risks.
Looking at your merger with the Chicago Board of Trade, once that does happen, will you truly be able to merge the product bases of these two huge exchanges?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of how we're going to benefit our customers in terms of efficiencies and at the same time create value for our shareholders. We're going to be trading all of the products of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the Chicago Board of Trade on the CME's Globex platform. And we're also going to be consolidating all of our physically traded contracts onto a single trading floor located at the Chicago Board of Trade.
In terms of getting approval, when do you expect to hear from the Department of Justice?
Well, that's an ongoing process. We're working very closely with the Department of Justice right now, and so it's up to them, really. We can't set the time frame. That's for government to decide, but we're certainly doing our part, we hope, in terms of being responsive and meeting their needs.
There's already a lot of speculation that the next step for the Chicago Merc is to do some kind of merger or linkage with a global exchange, probably or possibly with some exchange in Asia. What are your plans?
That may be in our future, but at the same time, we're not dependent on that. We can grow globally because of our global distribution network for electronic trading. So we'll have to wait and see.
Mr. Donahue, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you very much.
President Bush is taking his plan for the economy on the road. At the Caterpillar plant in Peoria, Illinois today, Mr. Bush said the nation needs to keep its economy growing, and we can do that with low taxes and free trade. He wants Congress to make his tax cuts permanent, a move he says won't interfere with balancing the budget. Tomorrow, the president heads to New York City for a speech there on the economy. And speaking of the economy, with the cost of the war in Iraq and hopes of restoring fiscal discipline, Democrats in Congress are trying to find cash to pay for their priorities. That's where the tax gap comes in. As Darren Gersh reports, it's the difference between what Americans owe the IRS and what they actually pay.
In Washington, closing the tax gap has become a favorite way to bring in money without seeming to raise taxes. That's why Senate Finance Committee Chairman Max Baucus came to talk to the IRS today.
It's just not fair to American taxpayers at about $345 billion annually of revenue, which is legally owed, is not collected.
Baucus and other tax writers on Capitol Hill are now looking very closely at investors to help close some of that tax gap. The Government Accountability Office estimates in 2001, 8 million taxpayers misreported their capital gains taxes. The main reason? Brokers tell the IRS how much money an investor got from selling a stock, but don't report what the investor paid for that stock. Capital gains taxes are figured by subtracting gross sales from the costs paid or basis to get at the capital gains used to calculate the actual tax owed. National taxpayer advocate Nina Olson says if brokers reported stock cost basis to the IRS, the government could collect up to $10 billion a year. The information might also help some taxpayers who aren't sure what they paid for a stock or mutual fund.
What they do is they guess, and they are just as likely to underestimate what their basis is and overpay tax.
Many brokerage firms already track cost basis for customers. Mark Lakritz is co-CEO of the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association. He cautions basis reporting can get tricky. when you throw in things like foreign stocks and real estate investment trusts.
There are a number of different instruments where their prices are not that easily discerned and where it's complicated. So what we need to do is we need to phase this in a measured way by taking the simple things first, like taking stocks, for example, or mutual funds first.
If Congress does decide to require stock basis reporting, it's likely to do so for new investments. No one expects a broker to try to figure out what somebody paid for AT&T 30 years ago. Darren Gersh, Nightly Business Report, Washington.
Now let's take a look at some stocks in the news tonight. Most active issue on the New York Exchange, trading 32.5 million shares. Motorola with a good gain of $1.27. Billionaire investor Carl Icahn says he owns 1.4% of Motorola and is seeking a seat on the board of directors. He also said the stock is cheap here, and if he's buying it, so should the company. GE a 16-cent loss, and then ExxonMobil in that strong energy group giving the market support. AT&T up 58 cents, and Pfizer 4-cent gain there, fifth in big board volume. Bank of America moved up 66 cents. Halliburton a 56-cent gain. Ford Motor dropping 17 cents. Boston Scientific moved up 62 cents. The company got FDA approval to expand usage of one of its angioplasty products. Then 10th in volume was Walmart Stores with a loss of 35 cents a share. Alcoa, Dow stock, moved up 51 cents after Morgan Stanley upgraded it from equal weight to overweight, boosted the price target from $30 to $40 a share. Then we see United States Steel up $3.39. A good earnings report for the fourth quarter, $2.50, way up from 85 cents. Sales up nearly 9% over last year. Wyeth, $1.24 loss despite higher fourth quarter earnings of 63 cents versus last year's 54. Unum Provident, which is in the process of changing its name to just Unum Group, up $2.09. Fourth quarter earnings almost doubled to 80 cents versus last year's 43 cents. Then we see the freight shipper Conway up $3.14. Fourth quarter earnings, excluding one-time items, 82 cents, down from 89 last year, but that was 8 cents better than the street was expecting. Illinois Tool Works up $3.24. Story here, good earnings. Fourth quarter, 77, up from last year's 71, 4 cents above the street estimate. Company's upbeat on first quarter results. Weatherford International, the oil service company, up $2.46. Fourth quarter earnings, excluding one-time items, 76 cents, way up from last year's 46 cents. Big loser, Tenneco Automotive in the auto replacement part business. Fourth quarter earnings, excluding items, 6 cents, way down from 28 cents. The street was looking for 19 cents in earnings. Lexmark International fell $3.72. Fourth quarter earnings 91 cents, 20 cents better than last year, but the company sees first quarter earnings of only 90 cents to $1 a share. The street estimate is up there at $1.04. And UPS, 95-cent loss, traded as low as $70.38. Fourth quarter earnings were up to $1.04 versus last year's 95 cents, but the company sees first quarter earnings dropping to 94 to 98 cents a share. Google topped the active list on NASDAQ. Earnings due out tomorrow on that one, up $1.85. Microsoft a nickel drop, 39-cent loss on Apple. Intel, 4-cent gain. Same story with Cisco Systems, which is fifth in volume on a dollar basis. Amgen up 36 cents. Oracle dropped 11 cents. SanDisk, 59-cent gain. eBay moved up 9 cents, and Sun Microsystems up 8 cents, 10th in volume. Genesis Microchip losing $1.79. Company had a third quarter loss of 21 cents versus earnings of 27 cents last year, and revenues tumbled 31%. Align Technology, which is in the teeth straightening business, had a fourth quarter loss of a penny versus a penny earnings last year, but it sees first quarter earnings rising to 2 to 4 cents a share. Street was expecting a loss of 15 cents, so much better than expected. Those are the stocks on the news tonight. Susie?
Thanks, Paul. Oil companies are spending billions of dollars in hopes of producing billions of barrels of oil in the Gulf of Mexico's deep waters. But deep water drilling is risky. As we continue our series, Deep Oil, Diane Estabrook looks at the cutting-edge technologies the oil industry is using to make deep water drilling safer and more effective.
5 years ago, Chevron drilled an exploratory well here and found oil beneath 4,300 feet of water in the Gulf of Mexico. Was it a lucky strike on Chevron's part? Not quite.
Right there, believe it or not, as ambiguous as that image looks, we're looking at about 500 million barrels of oil.
Chevron geophysicist Barney Easton is viewing a 3D computer image of the Tahiti field in the Gulf of Mexico. These seismic images created by sound waves convinced Chevron that peaks in a salt layer were created by oil.
Oil wants to migrate uphill, so this suggested to us that oil would have migrated up until it couldn't move any further when it reaches the salt layer, and there it would sit for several millions of years waiting for us to drill it.
Cutting-edge technology like 3D imaging is helping the oil industry explore and produce crude in hard-to-reach areas beneath the ocean floor. Paul Siegley, Chevron Vice President of Deepwater Exploration Projects, says technology is reducing the risk of deepwater drilling, making it more viable.
Just about anywhere you turn, there's some really exciting technological challenges that are being met in order to make this commercial.
Deepwater drilling isn't an exact science. Engineers can't be absolutely certain what geologic obstacles they might encounter or what the consistency of the oil will be. To prevent and solve problems in well drilling, Halliburton is placing sensors in drill assemblies. These are the tube-like structures directly behind the drill bit. The sensors relay seismic information about the drilling process to computers that convert it to 3D images. At an off-site laboratory, Halliburton Manager of Geoscience Nicholas Purday can monitor drilling.
We can real-time adjust the well, and this is a good example here where we're adjusting a well real-time. We've kind of come in, we've hit the top of the reservoir, then we've come out of the top of the reservoir again, so we would use Halliburton's tools to real-time steer the well back into the reservoir.
Getting to the oil is only half of the battle. Getting it out is the other half. That is where drilling fluids come in. They are used to carry out rock, mud, and sand at the bottom of oil wells. During deepwater drilling, the fluids are subjected to very extreme temperature changes. Baker Hughes Deepwater Operations Manager Jerry Odemaw says chemists are developing new drilling fluids that should adapt to those changes.
We have to design the fluid to where it doesn't get too thin so that it can carry the cuttings out, or too thick to where you can still pump it. So we have to make sure under those conditions it's pumpable fluid and doesn't cause any problems while drilling.
Since the Tahiti field is in such deep water, a traditional fixed oil platform can't be used, so a floating one like this will be used. Mustang Engineering is designing the platform that Chevron will use at the Tahiti field when it starts producing oil there next year. The Tahiti project is presenting unique challenges. Because it is so far from land, redundant systems must be built. Those redundancies add to the weight of the platform. Mustang Upstream Project Manager Gary Wilkes says engineers are getting around that problem through innovation.
We used a lot of fiberglass, we used some aluminum, and then we tried to limit the design. We tried not to be too extravagant with what we actually put out there in terms of facilities.
While all of this innovation makes deepwater drilling possible, it also makes the process more expensive. But oil companies believe the money spent on technology now will result in increased oil production and healthier profits in the future. Diane Estabrook, Nightly Business Report, Houston, Texas.
Tomorrow, going deeper than ever before, we look at where the Gulf's largest reserves are buried as deep oil continues.
Here's a look at what's happening tomorrow. President Bush comes to Wall Street for a speech on the state of the economy. The Federal Reserve issues its decision on interest rates. Also tomorrow, fourth quarter GDP numbers, December construction spending, and the weekly report on crude oil and gasoline inventories. Well, tonight's commentator says when it comes to private equity buyouts, it's time to start calling them what they really are. Here's Alan Sloan, Wall Street editor at Newsweek.
Words matter on Wall Street. Not as much as money, of course, but they do make a difference. Every day now we hear how private equity is a huge force on Wall Street. Almost every big takeover seems to involve private equity firms. But unless you're a Wall Street maven or a historian, you may not know that private equity used to have a different name, leveraged buyouts, LBOs for short. But in the early 1990s, after LBO guys fought an unseemly barbarians at the gate takeover battle over RJR, they decided leveraged buyouts wasn't a classy name anymore. So LBO houses began calling themselves private equity firms. As a recovering English major, I like to call things what they are. Leveraged buyouts, which means buyouts involving borrowed money, is a much more helpful term than private equity, which doesn't really mean anything, especially since these firms, which talk about the joys of being able to run companies privately without Wall Street scrutiny, take the companies public as soon as they can to cash out. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to say LBO instead of private equity, just as I say junk bonds rather than high yield bonds, or selling rather than profit taking when I talk about the market, or stock prices falling rather than correcting. Using better English won't change the financial world, but it may help us have a better idea of what's going on in it. I'm Alan Sloan.
Recapping today's market action, the Dow gains 32 points, the Nasdaq rises 7. To learn more about the stories in tonight's broadcast, go to Nightly Business Report on PBS.org. You can also email us at nbr@pbs.org.
And finally tonight, while this weekend's Super Bowl will be played on a football field, it's also a big play for advertising. The research firm TNS Media Intelligence says over the last 20 years, besides the actual game, there have been more than 1,400 commercials televised. That's over 11 hours of ads. There have been 221 different sponsors spending almost $1.75 billion on TV spots. The company with the most money spent on Super Bowl ads is, no surprise, Anheuser-Busch, which apparently thinks beer and bowl games go together. And Paul, if you were thinking of advertising in Sunday's game, you'd shell out $2.6 million for just 30 seconds of airtime. But too late now, the game's already sold out.
Doggone, I missed a chance.
That's Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, January 30th. I'm Susie Garib. Good night, everyone. Good night to you, Paul.
Good night, Susie. I'm Paul Kangas, wishing all of you the best of goodbye.
Nightly Business Report is made possible by
Is your nest egg in shape for retirement? Objective financial advice can help. A.G. Edwards, for more than 118 years, fully invested in our clients.
Franklin Templeton Investments. After 50 years of worldwide investing, we see market opportunities through the eyes of experience. Franklin Templeton Investments. Gain from our perspective.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.